I'm Amy Eisenstein. Welcome to Ask the Fundraising Expert. Today I have my good friend, colleague, and mentor, Gail Perry here of Fired Up Fundraising. Gail is a consultant, a board expert, a campaign expert. The list goes on, and I'm just thrilled she's here to join me today. Welcome, Gail.
Amy, I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
We are going to talk about campaigns today because that is
favorite topics.
One of your many areas of expertise. Mm-hmm. And I want to start out by asking if an organization is even toying with the idea of having a campaign, how do they know when they should have a campaign, when they might be ready, all that good stuff?
Well, that's a great question because lots of times organizations get their vision way out ahead of them when they're really not ready at all. And board members will go, boom, ba boom, ba boom, we're having a campaign, and they'll even try to announce a campaign, and the poor fundraising staff is left there going, we're not ready, we're not ready. So there are a number of factors that you know as well as I actually about what an organization needs to have in place. I call it like stacking the dominoes. If you get everything lined up, boom, boom, ahead of time, then once you launch your campaign, it'll go boom, 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 and it'll roll out beautifully.
Fall right into place, right?
Yeah.
So what are some of those factors? What are the top few factors that you have boards and development directors look for to determine whether or not they should even consider a campaign?
Right. Well, the first thing, of course, is a big juicy vision. A vision of a new world, a possibility of what an organization can do and be in the world. It's got to be a vision that really excites people. And then, of course, you've got to put numbers on the vision and make it coherent and develop a rational case around it. So the vision sometimes is there, sometimes it's not. And sometimes the board is arguing about what the vision should be. So that can be a big body of work for an organization to go through the visioning process.
Yeah, and talk a little bit more even about what a vision should contain. Does it contain numbers, finances?
Well, it evolves. First there's this notion. And then we vet the notion with people and our board and the leaders of the community. Does this fit? Can we accomplish it? And I like to think that the case for support, as we call it, for a capital campaign project, evolves and gradually it takes shape as time goes on, and we do shape up the numbers. But ultimately, yes, we got to have the numbers, we need to have a footprint, we need to have an indication of the impact, and we need words that just make it juicy and exciting and emotional for people.
Yeah, absolutely. Good.
Yeah.
And what about a feasibility study? What do you think about feasibility studies? And even talk about what they are.
First of all, what is a feasibility study? A feasibility study is the hiring of a consultant or consulting firm to interview a set of potential donors to your campaign. And we ask the potential donors, what do you think of the organization? What do you think of this big, exciting project? What do you think of, can the organization raise the money? And where do you think the money might come from? And when the time comes around, what is the level of your interest in this project and your willingness to consider financial support? So you've got a consultant who's a complete stranger to the organization out there in front of your best prospects, neutrally interviewing them. Now, there are good and bad things about that. Well, there are not very many bad things. The good things about this is that you have a neutral observer who the donors can be quite frank with. Mm-hmm. Because if you, as a representative of the organization, try to have these interviews, they're going to not be quite so frank, perhaps.
Right. They may not want to tell you that they don't like the vision or that they're not on board financially. It's hard to do if you're a representative of the organization and you're a community member. Mm-hmm. It's hard to say no sometimes, but if it's a stranger, it might be easier, right?
Now, I will say that I have staffed a capital campaign and led it as staff member that did not have a feasibility study, and I was quite successful. Now, what did I have together? I had the time to personally go see my major donor prospects, get to know them well enough to know where they stood. So I was able to develop a prospect list that I felt quite comfortable with, and I knew exactly what everybody's hot buttons were and how they felt, what they liked and didn't like. So not every organization has that staff to go do these relationships. So that's why I have mixed feelings about the feasibility study, because any organization worth its salt who's really going to be able to raise this money needs to be able to be in front of its donors having these same conversations. And instead, they'll hire a consultant and pay them breathtaking amounts of money to go do their own work.
Oh, so you're not such a fan of the feasibility study.
I have done many. And in some situations it must be done because the organization can't do it otherwise.
Right. So if an organization really has good, solid experience in major gift fundraising and has raised some serious major gifts before, they may be able to handle some of the feasibility study components on their own without an outside consultant. But if this is something that an organization doesn't really have that much experience with, they need some outside guidance. Really need it. Yeah.
Now, I have seen organizations that get a feasibility study and that says that they're not ready. And when a feasibility comes back and says you're not ready, it means that your donors are not familiar enough with you and not excited enough about your project to indicate how they really feel about it, because it's sort of a blank slate. And so an organization really has to do some work then, because now they still have to do the work of engaging these people and having these conversations and doing what they should have done before the feasibility study happened.
And a good feasibility study will tell them what steps they need to take to prepare for a campaign. It won't just come back and say you can't have a campaign. It'll say hopefully before you have a campaign, you need to do this, that, and the other thing to cultivate and steward your donors better, usually, right?
But you know what I find? I find that the whole idea of visiting major donor prospects is confusing and bewildering to many fundraisers and nonprofits. Do you ever find that?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
I have to talk with a major donor. What am I going to do?
Yeah, say more about that. How can organizations and individuals get more comfortable with visiting their potential donors?
When an organization wants to call on a major donor prospect, there are 3 objectives that they need to follow, 3 only. And these objectives are not intuitive to many people. Now, the first objective is they are looking for a long-term relationship. That means that they want to be likable, and they want the prospect to enjoy the time with them, and they want to find out enough about the prospect so that the prospect will engage with a long-term relationship with them. So we're looking for the long term, right?
Yes.
We're not going in for a quick sell or to be pushy. The second thing is we are looking for the donor's hot buttons. What are they interested in? How do they feel about our organization? Do they like or not like? Many nonprofits' case for support has many legs. So a donor could be interested in the family aspect, or the kid aspect, or art, or parents, or single mothers, or your finances. You never really know. So knowing the donor's hot buttons gives you the information to design a cultivation program.
Right, and I think that's what cultivation is all about, and a lot of development directors don't do a lot of, but it's about asking those open-ended questions to get to know your donors so that you learn those things. Yeah? Okay, good.
And then the last objective, and I would say that if you don't accomplish this last objective, you have wasted everybody's time, including your own. And that is, you've got to walk out of the visit with a follow-up next step.
Yes.
At least 1, if not 2 or 3. So when I was a beginning fundraiser and I was chatting with the donor and they asked a question that I couldn't answer, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know the answer. I'm embarrassed, And now, if they ask a question that I can't answer, I go, yay, yes. Now I have a reason to get back to them.
That's right, the follow-up, absolutely.
And it used to be that if somebody asked a question, you're like stumbling all over yourself because you can finally talk. But now, as experienced fundraisers, we hold ourselves back and we say, Mr. Jones, I'm not so sure about the answer about that, but I'll get right back to you next week.
Right, and then it's your job to make sure that you follow up, of course.
Well, no person worth their salt, no fundraiser worth their salt is going to, hopefully, would emerge from a visit with 2 or 3 follow-up steps and not do them. It would make me weep in sadness for their wasted time.
That's right. You have to follow up. Let's talk more about what to do at the beginning of a campaign or pre-campaign.
Right.
How does an organization really know they're ready? Talk more about that.
Yes. Well, one thing I didn't mention earlier is the whole idea of a prospect list. And I find the development of a prospect list sometimes can be very mysterious to organizations. But there's a very straightforward way to create your campaign prospect list, and that is to start pulling together your data as best you can, and your campaign prospect list will evolve too. You know, you start with your best list of who you think might be these big donors, and then with more information coming in over time, you'll add names and you'll subtract names. But it's very important to rate these prospects based on their financial ability and on their level of interest in the organization. Sometimes people use 3 sets of criteria. I use 2. Very straightforward, very simple, and I love to see a list of names and an idea of how much money they might give me and whether they're warm, cold, or hot.
So what's the 2 criteria?
The 2 criteria?
Yeah.
Level of interest,
yes.
which is warm, cold, or hot.
Yes.
And an indicator of how deep their pockets are.
Wealth.
Their capacity, as we say in fundraising.
Yeah,
capacity.
Perfect. So we've been talking a little bit about the development director and staff, but
yeah.
let's jump to board members.
Oh boy, juicy topic.
Yeah.
And I love boards.
Talk about your favorite tips for board members in a campaign. What should they really be doing?
Well, the first thing they need to understand capital campaign strategy. Because like we said at the beginning, it's not intuitive. So their job is to educate themselves on what it is that we're doing and how it is that we're doing it. And they need to be willing to support the project financially and personally in terms of coalescing the other board members. Now, I'm always big on actions for board members. You know, yeah, I've got attitudes and this, but what do you need me to do, right? And board members are often quite nervous about what their personal role is in a campaign. I'm sure you've seen that as well. So the number one job we want to see board members do is open doors to prospects.
Yes.
And that is the job that they are scared to death to do.
So how do you talk to them about doing that? What do you tell them? How do you invite them to open up doors?
Oh, I have a whole braranwashing workshop I do with boards.
Brainwashing. All right, give us the highlights, the 20-second version.
Well, you know, listen, if board members, first you have to acknowledge that board members think that fundraising is about asking, it's about arm twisting, and it's about being pushy. So if I go in and I say, listen, let's just practice our elevator speech and our messaging, and let's turn you all into sneezers and open doors so you can spread the message, you know, and so you don't have to be pushy. You don't have to ask for money if you don't want to. You can have a party and just introduce us to people, and we'll take it from there.
So just to be clear, it's not about arm twisting. It's not about being pushy, right?
Never about
okay,
it.
good.
And it's never about money. Because if you make fundraising about money, you've shot yourself in the foot.
Now, some people may be surprised to hear that, but of course I completely agree with you. It is not about money, it's about impact. I always like to say, don't talk about money, talk about people fed, or children served, or learning to read, or people cured, diseases cured. Whatever you're talking about, it's not about the money, it's about what you're doing.
It's about the kids, the families, the environment, the art, the human condition. We can get really excited about those things. And so that's why you ask for help. You ask for the kids, you don't ask for the money.
That's right, absolutely.
You and I are on the same wavelength.
Yes.
Same wavelength.
Any final comments on organizations that are thinking about campaigns or just getting started with a campaign? What advice would you leave?
Well, you know, two. One is called go forward with great vigor, and remember that nothing was ever achieved without enthusiasm. So go forward with great vigor, but also run the numbers. I love data. You know, the data, the prospect list, you will know where you stand. You will know how much money you can possibly raise if you do your analysis.
Yeah,
so you need to have the emotion and you need to have the numbers both together, like any good fundraising project.
No, I think you're absolutely right. But I feel like people don't really know what you mean by run the numbers. So get even more specific if you can. What analysis are they doing? What are they looking for?
There's something called a donor pyramid, right? The donor pyramid.
Yes.
And if you needed to raise $10 million, you can't go out and find a whole bunch of $100,000 gifts. Instead, you've got to find one donor to give maybe 20% of the goal, and maybe 2 donors to give a slightly smaller gift, and maybe 4 donors, and then maybe 8 donors at a smaller level, and then you have many smaller donors at the bottom of the pyramid. And we see this pyramid fall out in campaign after campaign after campaign. More or less. It might be like this or it might be like this, but there are always going to be a smaller number of very large gifts. And when I was talking about that prospect list, we live in the top part of the campaign pyramid. So if I needed $1 million gift to make my overall goal, I would be looking for who those $1 million donors are.
Right.
If I needed two $500,000 gifts right here, I'd be trying to identify who might be those $500,000 donors. So I am literally looking at the pyramid and putting names at different levels so that I know where I stand. Oh gosh, we need more donors at the $250,000 level. Okay, well let's go out and do our research and see who we can find.
Perfect. I think that's exactly the explanation we needed. So, the first 5 to 10 donors in your campaign should get you maybe halfway to your goal,
yes,
depending on what the goal is, of course, but you need to make sure that you have prospects or prospective donors up in those top level gifts. Otherwise, you really can't even consider going into a campaign.
To consider.
Right.
And frankly, I have worked with organizations who knew who the lead donor was before the consultant walked in the door. And those are the kinds of campaigns I like to work on.
Yeah.
When I used to consult, I would walk into an organization, I would say to them, do you think you can raise this money? That was my question always. It's like an acid test, And then I would say, where do you think it's coming from? Because I wanted to know right there what kind of data has already been gathered and how much more work we have to do.
Yeah, those are two great questions. Do you think you can raise the money? Half of it's attitude, right?
Yeah.
And where, of course, is the money coming from? And organizations that have major gifts fundraising programs that are going into campaigns know where their top donors are and who they are.
So these two questions, every smart nonprofit should be asking themselves all the time if they're thinking about a big money campaign. Always.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Gail, thank you so much for being here and talking about campaigns today. I really appreciate it. I love your email newsletter. I read it every week.
Oh, it's so much fun for me to write. Every Friday morning, a little snappy message from Gail.
That's right. Excellent. Well, thanks so much for being here.
It was so much fun.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, Amy.
All right. Take care. Now it's your turn to share. I hope you'll join the discussion and help others by leaving a comment below. Did this video inspire you to try something new? Do you have an example or story to share? Do you agree or disagree with today's advice? If so, please let me know in the comments. And if you found this video helpful, be sure to share it with your friends and followers. Finally, if you want to learn even more ways to supercharge your fundraising, visit my website, trypointfundraising.com. Join my list, and as a thank you, you'll get 2 of my most popular ebooks for free. That's the end of today's episode, but I hope you're feeling inspired and empowered. Thanks so much for doing your part to make the world a better place. I hope to see you next time on Ask the Fundraising Expert.